Hello, welcome to day 9 of the New York State Craft Brewers Conference. Today is sponsored by Whiteman, Osterman Hannah, and this session is Growing with the Law, presented by Randall Beach, who is with Whiteman, Osterman Hannah. If you would take a moment and sign the attendance sheet so we know who's here, that would be really helpful for us. Keep your mics on mute. We prefer you turn your cameras on. It's nice to see each other. It's one of the small benefits of using Zoom. And any questions or comments you have, please write them in chat. And after Randall's presentation, we'll be happy to try to address those. We should have time to get through quite a bit here. And so welcome, Randall. We're really happy to have you. Randall has worked with many breweries and distilleries and is a colleague of Vince Valenza, who's been in and around the industry for quite a while, works with many of you as well. And if you recall, Whiteman, Osterman Hannah donated those beautiful tulip glasses that were handed out at our previous in-person conferences. So maybe that's something else to look forward to for our 2022 conference at Albany Capitol Center next year. All right, Randall, go ahead and share your screen. And
all right. Hopefully I can do this. I practiced, as I said.
I believe in you.
Unfortunately, I'm on an iPad, which makes it a little different, but I'm going to get there. Uh-oh. Famous last words. I was ready once. Let's see. Now everybody can see my email.
Hopefully there's nothing confidential. You aren't.
No, never. Oops, those are my notes. All right, here we go.
Thanks everybody for your patience.
Yes, thank you.
It'll be worth your while.
You can never practice enough, apparently. So welcome everyone. Thank you, Megan. Just a quick introduction to me, a little bit more about me and about Whiteman. Whiteman's we've been around since the late 1970s now, and it's too late in the day for me to start doing math about how long that is, but several decades. We are now 90 plus attorneys. When I first came in 2002, I think we were only 50, so we continue to grow. We're a full business law firm, and so we represent businesses all over the state and the region. My work brings me all the way down to Florida and probably as far west as California occasionally. I've been working at this kind of career for 23 years now. As Megan said, we represent, and I've represented
What just happened?
that's given me quite a useful insight into the alcoholic beverage industry as a whole and what it's like to be out there as an entrepreneur and a alcoholic beverage purveyor or manufacturer, I guess. So that's me, and that's the law, right? So the law is everywhere. I love that little meme, and because it reminds me that there's no area in our lives, in our businesses, in our careers that really don't somehow touch the law, whether we like it or not. There's many times I'm sure we would all prefer that we didn't have to deal with that law or regulation, but it is the basis of our society, the basis of our ability to conduct ourselves in commerce. And so when I was thinking about putting this together, and the thought that law is everywhere, I know that as when I created our distillery, and as I've helped other breweries, distilleries, and cideries start, it's fairly law intense. You get a lot of touch points with lawyers, unfortunately, probably, and certainly with the laws and the regulations that are impacting our industry. So of course you had to do whether you did it yourself, you had help, or you just turned it over to a consultant or an attorney. You dealt with the TTB and SLA licensing. You had to form, I hope, you all formed some type of entity, usually an LLC or a general partnership. Perhaps you purchased premises or leased it. You most likely had to go to a planning board meeting or two, or zoning board meetings to get the local approvals necessary to operate your brewery, and of course any loans, and perhaps even some equity raises. All of those were, tend to be in the beginning of the brewery operations, and it's a fairly intense time where you're talking to lawyers or dealing with laws and regulations on in a very compact amount of time, fairly intensely. And then we all hope that you're all set up so you don't need lawyers anymore. And although that is the hope of everyone, it's unfounded, unfortunately. Again, laws everywhere. You're going to have employees. What about intellectual property? What you now most likely will have some type of tap room or tasting room, and you'll have people in your, that's my son saying I'm awesome, in your on your premises. What about slip and fall or other accidents? Contracts, you're going, I know you have contracts. Look at what happened with respect to COVID-19 and how we had to deal with the continuing almost weekly, sometimes daily changes from SLA with respect to what we had to do for people coming into the on site, and how we could serve them, how we couldn't serve them. Perhaps you got a PPP loan to help you through the COVID. So we're operating, but we're always touching the law, and you just can't, you're never going to get away from it. And there's always going to be issues that are arising. So from my perspective, and this isn't unique to me, I certainly could never claim ownership to this, but you really have, as a business, and if you're a brewery and you're up and running and you think you're not a business, you better think again, because you are a business. We all would love to, as a distiller, I would love to just be creating good products and sharing with my friends, or just selling, when I wanted to, but that doesn't make sense, and it isn't really what it's all about. Some of us have taken it from a hobby and now grown it larger, but we really need to all understand, recognize, and treat our breweries and other alcoholic beverage manufacturing sites as true businesses. So with respect to the law, your business has two choices. You can either be proactive or reactive. The reactive approach is very common. It's common in not only with respect to legal issues, but respect to many issues, right? We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to see it. We don't want to think about it until it's a problem. The proactive approach is exactly the opposite. We're taking initial steps, integrating, in this case, lawyers and the law within our business operations on an ongoing basis, with the intent and the impact of either preventing problems, or when problems occur, issues always arise, to minimize those, and just being ready. And the keys to a proactive legal approach are really integration and prevention. And integration, in fact, leads to prevention. So some examples of integration of the law and your legal service provider with your operations. Legal audits are a big one. And these aren't done, in my opinion, they aren't done enough. And really a legal audit is having someone come in and take a look at usually one specific segment aspect of your operations. And having them look at that, make sure you're in compliance with what you need to be in compliance for, whether it be federal, state, or local laws and regulations. And also, once there's an understanding of compliance or non-compliance, figuring out and creating a path forward to enhance that segment of your operation to further reduce risk and squeeze as much efficiency out of that operation, that segment of the operation as possible. Human resources, massive area here for every business, and breweries certainly are no exception. There's so much, and this is as you likely know, this is always a changing aspect of business operations and legal requirements. You have to have, we all have to have, you have one employee now in New York State, you have to have sexual harassment training annually. It's mandatory. You should have a set plan of how you intake employees and a set plan of how you, on their departure. And you should have an employee manual, employee handbook. And the reason why you should have these is, one, not only to make sure that you're doing everything you can as a business owner to ensure that your employees are handled in a consistent manner, treated in a consistent manner, but in a fair manner, but also to protect yourself. Some of these human resource elements come with their own, at least, veil of protection in the event that there's a problem. If you don't have, for instance, and it's hard to imagine today that businesses don't, but there are still several that don't have a harassment policy. If you don't have that, that's a big ding against you if you get a claim. If you have it, well, it doesn't get you out of trouble, but it helps. It's a check mark in your column. So that's human resources is huge, and it's going to touch on all of your operations throughout the years as you grow larger and have more employees, as employees come and go. Tax planning is another issue and another way that legal services should be integrated within your operations. Corporate governance, this is a big one and a fairly easy one, really, to have someone make sure that your corporate books are in good shape, make sure that all your filings with New York State are current, that your entity is in good standing in New York State. These are easy things. Things are corporate governance aspects are easy to let go. Are you having an annual meeting? Probably not. Maybe some of you are, some of you aren't, depending on the size. But you all should at least have an annual meeting and a record of that. And when we see, I work a lot with our corporate people in mergers and acquisitions, and when we see this raise its head is when you go to, if you have dreams someday of selling your brewery, and whether that's a dream or whether at some point it's just time. all of those, that's going to rear its ugly head, and everybody's going to be asking for, oh, here, where are your corporate records? Well, it's not uncommon for there to be, the answer to that be, I don't have it. It's not a massive problem, but it does require extra work at that time, usually from your legal team, and that means extra cost at that time. And of course, one of the things that's critical, or any proponent of proactivity will tell you, and I think it nearly always proves to be true, is that being proactive saves money. It's always more expensive to go back and fix mistakes, or go back and try to recreate records that you should have been keeping all along. Being proactive allows you to spread those costs, one, over time, and two, it's just cheaper. It just always ends up being cheaper. Intellectual property, another huge area for all of us. Are your brands protected by trademark? Is the labeling, your artwork that goes along with that? I know things move fast, and we're concentrated as owners. You're concentrated on trying to, one, create your product, make sure it's the best product that you can create, and also get that product to market. And having to go through the IP, the trademark search, getting trademarks, it's secondary to that, and I understand that, but it's also critical that you do that. And you need to protect your brands. There's no sense in putting all of your work into creating something that you love and that you're excited to get out to the public, putting a brand on that, being happy with the artwork, being happy with the name, and all of a sudden you're getting a cease and desist letter, or there's just another product out there with the same name, and it's confusing the consumer. There's nothing good that comes from that, but it's another thing that is often overlooked by all of us. But another important area where legal services, as you grow bigger, as you have more brands, as you have more products, you need to keep your attorney involved and keep intellectual property, because it is a valuable resource that you've created. It's a valuable asset, not a resource. You need to protect that. Same thing with contract reviews. The time for your attorney to see the contract, the best time is not when the issue has arisen and your attorney's reading that for the first time. Again, it's going to cost more to fix the problem than it would have to prevent the problem. And contracts happen, they're a common part of our industry, common part of all businesses. It really doesn't cost a lot to have your attorney review contracts. One of the things that I always do for my clients is, if you use a contract form over and over again, and you can create a template with that I've looked at and blessed from a legal side. And so, so that's a one-time thing, really. And then you realize that then you can use that contract in your form with confidence. The only time you have to raise your hand and say, Randall, is this something that you should look at, is if there's something new in there. If there's a new term that either the other parties introduced or you both come up with. So there's ways to make contract review cost effective and efficient. Because I understand, nobody wants to be holding up their business to wait for some attorney to be able to get to your contract review. Capital and debt raising, capital raises and debt. As a firm, we help a lot of our alcoholic beverage companies raise different levels of capital, and certainly have done the loan work. Again, that's something that certainly on the capital raises, you need attorneys. But on the loan works too, you shouldn't be signing loan documents for your brewery without having good legal representation. Preparation for sale kind of takes all of this, and if you've been proactive, it's fairly easy. But you want somebody to make sure to integrate in your business and make sure that you're always keeping up with your record keeping, always keeping up and compliant, so that when you do go to sell, if you do go to sell your brewery, it's not a big slog to get it up to speed. And then preparation for the next big thing. One of the things that I've learned just throughout my career, there's a big difference between an attorney and an attorney that's really acting as a counselor. And there are attorneys that don't want to, don't have time to, don't have the inclination to act as that role as counselor. But if you can find one that does, it can be incredibly valuable to your business. And you should be able to, ideally, you should be able to pick up the phone to your attorney and without being charged and say, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about bringing this partner in, or I'm thinking about expanding in this way. What do you think? And if nothing else, you're going to get some issue spotting. I'm not suggesting that you rely on your attorney for business advice, but for legal business advice, yes. And you should be able to have that comfort level and that relationship with an attorney to turn to them and be able to pick up the phone to discuss ideas and concepts, and know that you're not going to be charged for it. You can just bounce ideas off them, and the attorney, if nothing else, is going to be issue spotting and help you perhaps ask other questions that you haven't thought about with respect to the idea or the new plan. Then, of course, so we're all cost conscious, and so everybody wants to know what's all that going to cost. Isn't it going to cost me an arm and a leg to have this integration? Be proactive. I think the best answer is another question, right? What will it cost if you don't do this? It's always so much more expensive to react, as I said before, and when you're talking about being in litigation, if you're faced with litigation, and particularly a litigation that could have been prevented by being proactive, litigation is so expensive. I don't know. So I'll throw out some numbers. I'm sure maybe my litigators will get mad at me one way or the other, but if you're not talking about some claim that's $50,000, $60,000, if you're going to Supreme Court in the New York State, if you're not thinking about, if you don't not dealing with a claim of that magnitude and higher, the answer is going to be it's not worth litigating. So either pay a large chunk of that in trying to settle. And 50 grand is a lot of money, but if you could have prevented that whole thing by just being proactive. And when I say it's not worth going to litigate, even when you're right, your attorney costs are going to be higher than the amount in question. So when that gets litigated, it's always about principle and about emotions, right? So people don't want to let that guy or that company go. They're right. The other side's wrong. I'm going to pursue it, and I don't care what it costs. Not all of us have that luxury, and dealing, as I'm sure you all know, whenever we're making decisions based on emotions, never a good thing, and very rarely do good business outcomes result. But we can also talk about fee structures, right? When we talk about costs. So the common fee structure is hourly. X amount of dollars per hour worked. Sorry about that. There's always alternatives. Some alternatives are flat fees. For instance, when our firm does licensing, it's a flat fee. And there are parts of, and sometimes there's parts of a bigger project that can be broken down in a flat fee. Maybe even it's worthwhile to put an attorney on retainer. I think that would be for the bigger breweries. Certainly not for small, probably, and not as viable for medium. But retainer of so much per month because I'm going to be dealing with you on a not a daily, hopefully, but a weekly basis, and there's a lot of things going on, and this is what I will pay you, lawyer, to have your attention. Blended rates. Those are rates where there's some kind of blend between a higher partner rate and an associate rate, so you get some bargain there. A hard cap, the law firm and your business agrees, look, we're not going to pay, you're going to do this task and we're not going to pay more than X. And then success and performance fees. If you want to, a related concept would be the contingency fee in litigation, where lawyers don't get paid unless they win. Here you get paid some, but if you succeed, if the endeavor is a success, you get paid a little more. If the purchase doesn't close, you get paid a little less. So the idea is, I don't want to get stuck on fee structures because it's not exciting. But what I really wanted to convey was all of this is a conversation that you should have with your attorneys, and you shouldn't be, it's critical, again, to be proactive, critical to engage with the legal service community, and you're the driver. You can talk about different ways to be able to make it affordable, so that it being proactive not only is smart from a business side, from protecting your business and anticipating issues and saving money that way, but also is not breaking the bank in any way as you integrate legal services into your overall operations. And that's really, I had a partner probably 2 decades ago now that's would always say to his clients, really, you should make it part of the budget. And I'm not, and I think maybe that's good advice for, I should clarify, make our fees part of your budget. But that can be good advice. I don't think that you need to have an ongoing payment stream to your attorneys unless there's, one, a big project being done, or two, an issue that's come up. But you should plan in your budgeting. It shouldn't be, oh my God, I don't have money to hire an attorney to do X, whether it's proactive or whether it's reactive. It should be something that's in your budgets, and you should anticipate at least a contingency for those expenses. And if you do that, it'll be, you're much more likely to be proactive, much more likely to pick up the phone and get legal help. And two, when there is an issue that arises, you're not completely, flabbergasted by the cost, or you're not borrowing money, or worse, you're not able to address the issue because you haven't budgeted for those possibilities, which, in this day and age, you and I both know people are litigious. There's always going to be something that arises, and usually, but you can protect yourself and be proactive against 90 to 95% of those are foreseeable. Some things you're just not going to foresee, and they're going to surprise you. But if you plan well, you'll be in a better position to handle that. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was, I think this is my last, yes it is. So the last thing I wanted to touch on was, what type of attorney should you look for? My only advice is, well, I guess there's three points. One, I really like the counselor model. If you can find someone, that really can help you in that way and that's willing to do that, I think that's incredibly important. Two, and these aren't in any particular order. Two, I think you definitely want people that are qualified, of course, and are familiar with your field, have worked with clients like you, and know their way around the applicable laws and the applicable regulations. And then finally, and this one is, how should I say this? This comes from the experience of listening from my clients and their other experiences, to find an attorney that is dedicated to, not necessarily just dedicated to brewery industry, but that is a business-oriented attorney and a transactional-oriented attorney, for the reason that I know people get very frustrated with attorneys, especially when they're slow, and to call someone when you need a contract done and to hear that they're in court for the next 5 days doesn't help you. It frustrates you, and it doesn't move the ball forward. So finding someone that's really, and I think solo practitioners are harder to find in that realm, because they have so much to do and they're only one person. Law firms are great because, a firm like ours, I have a litigator. So if we need to go to court, that's not me, but I'm going to get you to that person. And otherwise, you're never going to call and find me in court. I never go to court. I don't want to go to court. I go to court to fix my own traffic tickets. I probably shouldn't say that on YouTube, but that's only the time I go to court. There's nothing wrong with going to court. It's just not what I do. So when you call me, I'm there, and there's not going to be a 5-day or a longer wait. So those are my advices of what type of attorney to look for. A counselor, someone who deals with your types of businesses and issues, and also someone who's kind of dedicated to that type of transactional work, and has the ability to call upon colleagues that can help you. The attorney that can do it all is gone, and if he ever existed. And we are very specialized these days, just because the amount of laws and regulations have increased so much. It's hard to have a good grasp on multiple areas of law. And that's it. So I'll share my screen, maybe.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Randall. I just posted in the chat a link to the Partners and Allies page on the NYSBA website, where you will find Whiteman, Osterman Hannah listed, as well as a handful of other law firms or attorneys who all have experience in the craft beer industry. Many of them have been with us for several years, and show their support to the industry by becoming allies and partners of the NYSBA. So if you're looking for an attorney, check that page first. So, start with them. because they'll at least, very least, be familiar with the craft beer industry here in New York. And Chad had a question. Chad, do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question to Randall?
Yeah, Randall, thanks for this. I liked after I asked the question, you mentioned, a budget for attorney fees. That was very helpful. Thank you. My specific question is it common practice to get charged by like every single second by an attorney, even for something as simple as like a yes, no question via email? Kind of seems it's been inconsistent, and sometimes it kind of leaves a feeling of being nickel and diamond a little bit. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know how to approach people regarding this.
It's a lot of it is relationship, and it's going to depend on the relationship you have with that firm or that attorney. It is probably too common, right? That happens. So it's not. I certainly wouldn't. I'd be remiss if I said, "Oh my gosh, those people don't exist," or "that doesn't exist." But you want to. The ideal is to engage with someone that's going to be able to give you a yes or no answer, right? Email or pick up the phone for 5, 10, 15 minutes and talk without charging you, right? Because that's just part of the business of any business, is being available to your clients or your customers and not nickel and diming them. But you have to speak up. You definitely, if that's happening, speak up and say, this isn't acceptable. It's not personal. It's just, this doesn't work for us as a business. I need someone that's going to be, answering my questions, email, phone. If they're really easy and the top of your head, I don't need to be charged 0.2 of an hour, for that. And that, 0.2 of an hour on the, it could be $18. $25.
I understand people's time, absolutely, but yeah, I mean, when it's usually in 15-minute increments, so if you ask a yes or no question and they're charging you $500 an hour, they add up. So
Right.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that's. I've never really approached this because I didn't really know if that was common practice or not. But I will ask from now. Thank you.
I'd take off. I'd say one more thing. I take off my official attorney hat and say, if you don't speak up, it'll continue to happen. Mm-hmm. You need to have that conversation and come to an understanding about it. If just because just the way law firms work, it's all about time. So they're accounting for every bit of time, and you really need to come to that understanding with that attorney and say, I need to be able to ask questions without being. If it takes research and if it takes someone else, if it takes work, right? Sure, you need to pay for that. But if it's off the top of your head, if it's yes or no, you should have that conversation.
And even small breweries or ingredient suppliers should feel comfortable kind of pushing that agenda.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, you don't need to be a big guy.
Okay. You had mentioned legal audit, and that was the first I've heard of something like that. It made perfect sense to me. Like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you do a legal audit? So I'm intrigued by that. Would that be performed by the same person or firm that you're using to create the legal agreements, or would you want a second law firm to come in and do the audit, or what does that look like?
Depends. I would say it depends on what you're looking at, what segment of your business you're looking at. I mean, rarely is you do an audit for the entire business. It'd just be massive amount of time and money. So you try to basically bite off pieces in a priority list and tackle them piece by piece. But if there was a heavily, if it's more about compliance, I would say you would use the same firm, compliance issues with regulations, and because they're really looking at your operations in a more detailed way than they normally would engage with you. If it's, I'm worried about these contracts, or I would like to have someone else, right, look at that as you suggested. Here's the contracts that my firm, my attorney has been working with me on, and we've developed. What do you think? Is there anything missing? It's not particularly that common, but it certainly would be worthwhile. I would say if it's to a great enough magnitude,
Mhm.
and a big enough share of your business.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've been involved in maybe 3 semi-serious legal things over the years, and in all 3 instances, it was the type of thing where my attorney immediately said, these are all frivolous and you're going to win, and I probably just crested the $100,000 mark in legal fees to win these frivolous BS kind of things. Is there any, I think I know the answer, and the answer is no, but I mean, is there any frivolous protection where there's instances, is there a magic word where I can sue somebody to get my legal fees back, I guess is the question, because each time, including a person who sued me for wrongful termination, I ended up having to write her a check for 10 grand, and it was all bullshit. But my attorney said, hey, how many hours is it going to take me to get the 10 grand?
That's
so
right. That's right.
It's a level of frustration I know that myself and a lot of other brewers have. Any advice, or is there a magic word or a magic bullet we can use?
There's not of course, there's not a magic word, but and the courts only allow, if you're actually going through the court system, they only allow the attorney's fees in certain situations. And I would be remiss if I told you what they were, because I just don't know them off the top of my head. But in your agreements, it's always negotiable whether to put in clauses in there that you do get to if you're the prevailing party, then you can recover. That can go in, to my knowledge, every agreement you do, if both parties agree. So that kind of ends. That would be, Chris, a somewhat of a deterrent for frivolous, because if clients, or if your claimant and opponent, adversary, knows that they may very well be or will be responsible for your legal fees if they go and they make this frivolous claim and lose, that could deter that. But
yeah, it's not quite as contractually based as it is, my neighbor saying that I'm using my driveway too much.
Right, that's right. Or a wrongful termination claim.
Or the wrongful termination, yeah.
No, unfortunately, there's not. And of course, we're in New York State, where landlords, employers, people like that, we're on the wrong side of the gun most of the time.
So who can I frivolously sue that they will then settle with me, like my attorneys are telling me to settle with all the people frivolously suing me?
Maybe your attorney.
I'm going to sue you, Paul.
This might be really stupid because I'm not a lawyer, of course, but would a lawsuit against them, or is that just counterproductive in a sense?
Well, you're spending more money.
Again, all right. Well, I mean, just the threat of it, you wonder if that's enough. Yeah, but you're
right. There's always, and this is it's incredibly frustrating. I know, because there's always these small enough claims that are still substantial to you, but you just can't go to court with them. We always start with the nasty gram letters, and then the next step is, well, we could spend $3-5 grand to file the lawsuit and see if that, or the countersuit. But after that, it's very quickly your costs are increasing, and to where it's just not sustainable. So yeah, these frivolous lawsuits they're bad news, and they're not new, and they're not going away.
Yeah, Chris Erickson's presidency is in jeopardy in a few weeks at our board retreat, and so maybe wrongful termination suit there against the new.
I'm termed out. Don't forget, I'm termed out.
Oh, right.
Does anybody else have any questions for Randall? This is your opportunity to get a couple minutes of that non-billed legal counsel. We've talked a lot about having a team for your brewery, a team of advisors, right? We talk about having an attorney and an insurance person and an accountant. It's come up in several sessions, having a group of advisors or counsel and having real relationships with your attorney and your insurance provider and so on and so forth. And it's really good advice. It's come up a lot, but how many people actually do that? Chris, you've been in the business a long time. You're a smart guy. Do you have like this board, this group of advisors? Just as not to single you out, but I totally am.
Yeah, no, that's fine, and I do, and that's the thing
Okay.
is that I do, but the reason I do that is only because of time and relationships, right? Like I've been with my attorney since 1995. I've been with my insurance agent since 1996. My accountant, I've switched once. I've been with him since 2001. It definitely is. It's something that's difficult, I think, for newer businesses and newer breweries to get, because it's just, I deal with my insurance guy, best case scenario, once a year when he comes up to Lake Placid and explains my renewal to me, and I sign the form and away we go, and he gives me a dozen golf balls and we go on with our lives. It's obviously more phone calls and a little bit more than that, but it's stuff that you can't actively develop, I guess. It just has to happen over time. So if you're a brewery that's a year old, it's hard to put that team together because you've met with your insurance person once and you've met with your attorney probably to get as quick and easily established as you can get. So there's nothing but time that can really cement those relationships. But once they're there, I mean, I have everyone's cell phone. I can call anyone anytime. We purchased a new building, and it came together within a week from purchase, from looking at it to closing on it. And I could call everyone and get everything lined up in a matter of a day or two. So it's great when it happens, but it just has to evolve.
Yeah, it does take time. The other thing I should have mentioned when I was talking about what kind of attorney, just occurred to me. The attorney, and this is not going to be shocking to you, I'm sure, but attorneys that never have to ask questions of other people and that think they know it all, those are the ones to avoid too. I'm very quick to say, and part of it is because I have the luxury of 89 attorneys behind me, but I'm very quick to say, I have no idea, but I'll get you to this person, and she'll tell you the answer. And there are always attorneys and in all the walks of life that see it as a weakness to not know the answer. But to me, it's just today's law is just too much and too big for it. It's preposterous that I would know everything, even if I was the smartest guy around.
Right. Interesting. Any other questions to ask of Randall? We covered it.
Looks like it. Time for beer.
Just about. At 5:30. At 5:30 is the all-member meeting. Let me grab the link here. Hopefully everyone will attend that. It's for breweries and for allied members to come together, learn about the industry, see what's going on, Day of the Union. Thank you so much, Randall, for your time and expertise. Really appreciate it. And all the support that Whiteman, Osterman, and Hannah has provided to the NYSBA in the form of sponsorship over the last several years. We certainly hope that you'll participate in the 2022 conference at the Albany Capitol Center.
We certainly will. It's been our pleasure.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah.